Hi everybody, I'm Tony Heywood, this is Hannah Stippl from Austria. We've been working together on a project for the Atkinson Gallery in Southport. We have the exhibition is in two parts. One is a series of oil paintings, which we'll talk about later. This particular work is a joint collaborative venture that we've been working on probably for at least 2 weeks later last year, and then we've come together recently to then start finishing it off, adding to it, developing it, and this is its incarnation so far. We had to stop at some stage.
Yeah. And maybe some words about how it started. We know each other for quite a long time, I don't say how much. And we started to have conversations about nature and landscape, and then suddenly there was the idea to do an artwork together. Not very precise, it took on conversation for many years, and then last year I came here, you invited me to your studio, and actually it was the first time I went to this incredible, beautiful beach and forest in Formby, and I was, now I miss the word, but it was great, and I went forth and back, and much of this now is in the painting.
I think that's what's quite interesting, Annie, because both of us, we were running a course. I was Professor of Landscape Art, Hannah was the Assistant Professor in Vienna, and our practices are quite different. I mainly do installation work, and we have worked on a couple of installations in Vienna, but I've decided that I am from here and I wanted to start developing work purely about the Sefton coast. But it's the first time that I've ever worked with another artist on certainly on a painting. And painting is a fairly recent thing for me, whereas for you, Hannah, you've been painting for
25
years. But it's a sort of recent exploration for me, something that has come out of being in this place. But what's common to both of us, we really quite often do site-specific work, don't we?
Yeah.
You work in specific areas in Vienna, or in the city, perhaps more a city environment, I don't know whether that's fair. Whereas I think perhaps the installation works that I was doing were more actually created sometimes in the site itself.
Yeah.
But I don't know if perhaps that's not right, it's the other way around.
No, it's as you say, you're an installation artist who paints, and I'm a painter who does installation work.
Right,
So
okay.
that fits perfectly together. And I think what we really have in common is this work not only with painting landscape, but also picking stuff that is from the landscape and bring it into the exhibition site or the installation, however you call it. It's on the edge between installation and painting, at least for me. So I would talk about this still as a painting, and of course it has some part installation.
Yeah, I think there's something that we both do, and that is go to a place. And I think that was common with quite a lot of certain British land artists. They would go out into the place and then forage. Sort of, there's a little bit of hunter-gatherer going into places, finding material that sort of resonates with the place, or you think is really definitive of that particular place, and then bringing it back into the studio. That's what the installations, for me, usually creating them usually involved, and then planting them with real plants afterwards. But with this, actually the other thing is both of us work in a quite sort of layered manner, don't we? And I think that's what really appealed to me. You often work and then layer and layer and layer. Maybe that's a painting thing. And I often layer again with, I've got quite a collage-like way of exploring things. even with installations, I put layers and layers and plant it and more things, and that's what's happened with the painting.
Yeah.
So this is a sort of good combination
Yeah.
for two of us.
And that's good, a good point, the layer, because here I can show this tool I'm working with, which is quite specific. And I brought it from Austria. I work a long time with these pattern rollers. I don't know if anybody has something like this here in UK, maybe. But there you have a fixed pattern, and I choose according to the landscape, and then I go over and over and over, and sometimes there are, I don't know, 50 layers. The first 10 layers, they disappear, but they are still there, and you still feel them as a kind of background. And yeah, and whenever you look at the painting, you see them here and there and again. Yeah.
Well, I think that's you, and the important thing is when you first came down and said, should we work together? I don't know, exploring how to work together, was that you came down, you went down to the beach, and then quite often we would then discuss, because you've got such a huge range of pattern making material, you were then selecting some of the patterns that related specifically to the vegetation patterns on Formby Beach.
Yeah.
And then just to sort of describe how the sort of layering works, Hannah would essentially put down the background or the groundscape in with the rollers in a sort of vegetation pattern that sort of morphed between being vegetation and landscape. So it was quite abstract. And then I would then make a move and then start adding elements of specific pieces of the landscape that I was walking in, and also to add on top of it perhaps memories. I was brought up in Formby, so just a couple of little things here. There's sections under there where this might be ferns and pine that painted, and then I spent a long time camping in the forest, so there's sections here that sort of refer to tents. Well, here, there's the tent, there's the dunes, there's little fragments of glass. There are, that's a hawthorn branch. So there are elements that I was taking from a walk at the same time, but Hannah's response to the walk was quite different. So we'd make a move, I'd put a layer, Hannah would then roll over, perhaps eradicate. So I think what's really quite good in this process is having working with another artist when you're both painting on the same painting is quite unique and different. And I think you have to dissolve your ego and not be, who's going to make the final mark is always, and in fact it's not really, we never really know where it was finished, did we?
No, but I think there is this really great moment when there's the first time you approach from different sides, painting, and then one goes over the other. And that's you did not expect it, yeah? And but I think there is this really interesting moment where you have to let go, and it has to grow, and it really was growing for at first 10 days, and now here doing the installation again for some days.
Yeah, I think that's because even though you've covered something with a roller, I know it's there, and I might tease a bit out and then add another bit. So it's like making our presence known. But the other important thing I think is that my approach to doing the paintings over here and here are, I try and give a sort of language to all the objects and things I meet. I'm quite sort of this idea of animism, everything speaks and says something. So for me, the idea that I'm talking to the jellyfish or the pine tree or the shell, and then I do a sketch and put it painted up and another layer's added. The idea that working with Hannah was like having another, I talk about these objects as being more than human objects because I quite like to big up nature. We're not always on top of it. But then having Hannah working with me was like, so we have a dialogue, two human beings and the jellyfish and the shells and the pine trees. So they're all going on together. So the final thing is quite abstract, but you can see that there's a sort of sense of this thing, this is what we like, is trying to talk. And then when we came in this week, we've been working on all this week, we then went down to the beach and started using some of the raw materials that we found. We discarded a lot and not brought all of them in, so there's a heavy editing process, but we've decided that this filter of branches works really well.
And not only the branches, because I think also the tapestry is really important, the stitched things.
Yes.
That they come from your side, but they are found here locally, so somebody else did them and we used them and brought them into our painting.
Yeah. All the tapestries we've been sort of finding in sort of gift shops, charity shops, but we've then shown them in reverse, so there's this sort of evidence of hands on there that you can't quite see, but there's in fact, they're all selected for either flowers or roses, but you see quite a lot of dog roses down on the beach, trees, pine trees, there's even some deer in one of these. So we've sort of, the motifs in the tapestry have sort of then been wrapped onto the branches, and I think they sort of feel like there's some element of wind or things getting tangled, and that's what, I don't know, I'm on the beach, that's really a palpable thing. Wind, not being able to see through the trees, sand in your face, things blowing, clothes. So there's a texture, but it's also an emotion of the place.
And every day it's different.
And every day,
Every day it's different.
Yeah.